Ja, ein herzliches Willkommen von meiner Seite. Mein Name ist Kern Schamberger. Es freut mich, dass trotz dieses wunderschönen Wetters so viele hier in das Hansa-Haus geschafft haben. Zu Beginn ein paar kurze Worte von mir im Namen des Bündnisses, das diese Veranstaltung organisiert hat. Das sind heute Amnesty International, Bezirk München und Oberbayern, die DFG-VK, IPPNW München, die Jüdisch-Palästinensische Dialoggruppe München und das Münchner Friedensbündnis und natürlich Medico international. Viele der heute vertretenen Organisationen haben sich das erste Mal am 11. Januar zusammengetan. Wenn ich jetzt fragen würde, wer damals alles auf der Kundgebung vor dem Rathaus war, dann würden wahrscheinlich viele ihre Hände heben. Wir haben die Kundgebung damals gemacht für einen gerechten Frieden in Palästina und Israel, Zivilbevölkerung schützen, Waffenexporte stoppen. Das war das Motto damals. Aber trotzdem geht bis heute der Krieg und das Massentöten von PalästinenserInnen durch die israelische Armee weiter, auch wenn es einen kurzen Waffenstillstand gegeben hat. Die aktuellen Zahlen der zwischen dem 18. März, als der Krieg wieder begann, und dem 17. April, also letzte Woche, getöteten PalästinenserInnen beläuft sich auf 1691 Personen, darunter mehr als 1000 Kinder, Frauen und ältere Menschen. Und es werden täglich mehr, wie ihr oder sie immer aus den Nachrichten lesen könnt. In Gaza sind seit dem 8. Oktober 2023 mehr Mitarbeiterinnen von Hilfsorganisationen getötet worden als israelische Soldatinnen. Es gibt Berichte darüber, die sind ganz aktuell, dass die Bewohnerinnen des Gazastreifens aufgrund der Blockade von Hilfslieferungen nun sogar Schildkröten und Pferde essen müssen. Seit dem 18. März mussten 95% der Hilfsleistungen ausgesetzt oder drastisch gekürzt werden, weil Israel diese blockiert. Erlauben Sie mir auch ein paar Worte als Medico-Vertreter. In früheren Kriegen hat Medico nicht nur über palästinensische Partnerinnen Nothilfe in Gaza leisten können, sondern in der Regel auch gemeinsam mit den Ärzten für Menschenrechte, Physicians for Human Rights. Das ist während dieses Krieges und während dieses Genozides anders. Noch nie haben unsere Partnerinnen in Gaza so sehr ums Überleben gekämpft wie in dieser Situation. Noch nie waren auch selbst in der Nothilfe für Gaza sonst sehr starke Organisationen wie die Ärzte für Menschenrechte so sehr die Hände gebunden wie in den letzten 17 Monaten. Und doch sind auch unsere israelischen Partnerinnen nicht tatenlos, wie wir gleich von Guy Shalev, aber eben auch von anderen Organisationen, die hier vertreten sind, hören werden. Für aus Gaza verschleppte Palästinenserinnen setzen sich zum Beispiel unsere Partner des Public Committee Against Torture in Israel ein, der Human Rights Defenders Fund und Hamoket. Mit dem derzeit vielleicht prominentesten Fall des Sanitäters Assad al-Nassasra, einem von nur 2 Überlebenden bei der gezielten Ermordung von 15 Rettungssanitätern, Katastrophenschützern und einem UN-Mitarbeiter in Rafah durch die Soldaten der israelischen Armee im März. Es hieß, dass al-Nassasra verhaftet worden sei und unsere Partnerorganisation hat zusammen mit seiner Frau und seiner Familie versucht, den Aufenthaltsort des verschleppten Sanitäters herauszufinden. Und die aktuellste Nachricht ist heute, gerade haben wir darüber geredet, dass vor einigen Stunden die Information gekommen ist, dass er nach 37 Tagen Haft heute entlassen und endlich wieder aufgetaucht ist. Ich möchte dem Hansa-Haus danken, dass wir diese Veranstaltung hier machen können. Es war selbst für diese Veranstaltung nicht ganz so leicht, Räumlichkeiten in der Stadt zu finden. Also vielen, vielen Dank, dass wir hier sein können. Ich möchte auch jetzt schon den Dolmetscherinnen danken, die für das Publikum hier dolmetschen. 2 Studierende des Fremdspracheninstituts München, Vera und Jossi. Vielen herzlichen Dank, dass ihr übersetzt. Ich würde gern enden mit einem Zitat aus diesem Buch, das vor kurzem erschienen ist, Die Welt nach Gaza von Pankaj Mishra. Vielleicht habt ihr es schon gelesen. Er zitiert dort einen polnischen Dichter, Czesław Miłosz, der sagte einmal: Wenn wir zum Mitgefühl fähig und zugleich machtlos sind, leben wir in einer verzweifelten Gereiztheit. Und ich denke, vielen unter uns hier geht es genau so in den letzten Monaten. Und trotzdem ist es gut, dass Sie und ihr heute so zahlreich gekommen seid. Vielen Dank dafür. Ich übergebe jetzt die Worte an Nadja Wieler, die dankenswerterweise die Moderation heute übernimmt. Vielen Dank.
Ja, Hallo. Genau. Ja, vielen Dank auch von mir, Kerem. Ich freue mich auch, so viele Gesichter hier zu sehen. Es ist wirklich sehr schön, dass so viele hierher gefunden haben. Genau, ich rede jetzt gleich ein bisschen lauter. Bevor ich mit der Vorstellungsrunde anfange, ein kleiner Hinweis zum Organisatorischen. Wir werden etwa ungefähr 50, 60 Minuten die Podiumsdiskussion haben. Danach werden wir die Fragerunde eröffnen, etwa 20 Minuten, 30 Minuten ungefähr. Genau, also von unseren Gästen, wir haben hier Dr. Guy Shalev, er ist medizinischer Anthropologe und Direktor von Physicians for Human Rights Israel. Das ist einer der führenden NGOs, die sich für das Recht auf Gesundheit für alle Menschen einsetzt, die zwischen dem Fluss und dem Meer leben. Promoviert hat er über den Einfluss Gesundheitspolitik auf palästinensischstämmige Ärztinnen in Israel im beruflichen Kontext. Zudem hat er einige Artikel über den erlebten Rassismus im israelischen Gesundheitssystem geschrieben, bei PalästinenserInnen sowohl als Arbeitnehmerinnen als auch als Patientinnen. Physicians for Human Rights Israel wurde 1988 von einer Gruppe israelischer Ärztinnen gegründet. Sie wird vom Motto geläutet: Die Gesundheitsversorgung ist ein grundlegendes Menschenrecht, unabhängig von Nationalität, ethnischer Zugehörigkeit und Rechtsstatus. Genau. Dr. Diana Nazal ist Deutsch-Palästinenserin und arbeitet als Augenchirurgin in Deutschland. Sie war zu Beginn des Jahres im Rahmen einer medizinischen Mission in Gaza, um dort viele der verletzten Augen zu behandeln und koordiniert mit Fachkolleginnen weltweit die Unterstützung der augenärztlichen Versorgung in Gaza. Nebenberuflich ist Dr. Nazal in den palästina-solidarischen Gruppen Palästina spricht, Berlin und Stop Arming Israel Germany aktiv. Denn sie ist überzeugt, dass der Ursprung des Genozids in Gaza zunächst einmal durch politische Arbeit behandelt werden muss. Tom Kellner und Seba Audaka sind die Mitbegründer von Clean Shelter, einer in Deutschland ansässigen humanitären Organisation, die dringend benötigte sanitäre Einrichtungen und Unterkünfte für vertriebene Familien in Gaza bereitstellt. Kellner ist jüdische Israelin aus Haifa, die in Berlin lebt und als Cellistin und Literaturdozentin arbeitet, während Audaka eine Palästinenserin aus dem südlichen Gazastreifen ist, die derzeit in München lebt und als Beraterin für eine Frauenrechts-NGO tätig ist. Clean Shelter wurde im Januar 2024 gegründet und konnte bisher über 1000 Sanitäranlagen und 2000 Familien mit sauberem Trinkwasser versorgen. Sie betreiben auch eine solarbetriebene Entsalzungsanlage. Das sind unsere Gäste für heute Abend. Mein Name ist Dr. Nadja Wieler. Ich bin Ärztin für Neurologie und Psychiatrie und bin Mitglied der ärztlichen Friedensorganisation IPPNW, Ärztinnen und Ärzte zur Verhütung des Atomkriegs. Die IPPNW setzt sich für den Frieden und Menschenrechte überall auf der Welt ein. Genau, dann würde ich sagen, fangen wir mal an. Genau. Die Diskussion wird primär auf Englisch und auf Deutsch fortgeführt. So, Dr. Shalev, my first question goes to you. One of the most prominent examples lately was the massacre of 15 healthcare workers on March the 23rd, out of which 8 were workers of the Red Crescent. And the others were civil defense responders and 1 UN staff member. I would like to ask you if you have how your organization, Physicians for Human Rights, how they reacted to that, and maybe perhaps out of the Israeli perspective, how the reaction was from the media, since the video surfaced.
Right. Thank you for coming and thank you for hosting us. The case of the murder of the 15 paramedics and civil security officers is an extreme case out of what we see in the past year and a half, and the attack on healthcare and aid and support in Gaza. So for us at PHRI, this is one event which is very tragic, but it's in a way surfaced in the world media, paid attention to this attack on healthcare professionals, but this is a part of this very tragic attack on healthcare. We've seen almost all hospitals and clinics in Gaza attacked, were not operative for a period of time. Still now, only half of them are operative. We have more than 1,400 healthcare professionals and aid workers who were killed since October 7. More than 230 professionals, healthcare professionals who were abducted, basically forcibly disappeared and arrested, held in Israeli incarceration facilities. And this, together with the blocking of humanitarian aid and the blocking of any way of getting patients out of Gaza, with 25,000 people waiting urgent medical evacuations that is blocked by Israel. So with all these different aspects, this is what the result of that is that we have more than 2 million people with no basic health care, chronic diseases that cannot be treated in any of Gaza's current hospitals and infrastructure. Just think about cancer patients. There is no cancer treatment. Many of the cancer treatments are not available. I mean, even if we zoom out of the attacks, the actual bombing and injuries of many thousands, even the chronic diseases, dialysis for children, all these care, kind of treatments are not available, and Israel is blocking any way of getting these people out and evacuated to hospitals. We appealed to the Israeli High Court to get patients out to East Jerusalem and West Bank hospitals. We work with these hospitals in East Jerusalem. They are willing to get patients. They have the capacity to treat for these, but Israel is blocking any way of getting those people out. Like I said, 25,000 are waiting for medical evacuations, with a few hundreds living in the past year. So just imagine the many thousands who are just waiting to get treatment or not, and that is not available. Sorry, I got drifted away from the case, which is, again, a very dramatic case that got attention also somehow in Israeli media. It was not possible for the Israeli media to disregard this event because it went worldwide with all international media focusing on that and covering that. As probably many of you know, originally the Israeli military claimed that it's not true, or they didn't have the signage of the Red Crescent, and of course later with videos we've seen that the story that the military was telling was changing. We've seen this in the past with other cases where there's basically when there's no evidence they can say whatever they want, but then when the evidence surfaces, then we see that the story changes a long time. And I think still with getting the evidence out, a lot of the Israeli reaction as someone living in Israel, Jewish Israeli, and seeing the media was maybe this was a one-time mistake, maybe it was short soldier who were not following orders, but as I just described, we see that as part of a more kind of structured and institutional attack.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm curious, perhaps, maybe, I mean, you mentioned a couple of facts right now and some numbers. I'm curious, how do you collect that data? Like, do you work with human rights organizations in Gaza, or maybe can you tell us about how you collect that information on the ground?
Right, so the information, most of the information that anyone in the world have comes from the Gazan Ministry of Health, which we work with closely for many years. We've been, until October 7th, sending delegations into Gaza every 6 weeks, working in hospitals in Gaza. So a lot of our colleagues, a lot of our friends and people we worked for many years work there. They tell us the stories, and the numbers come from the Ministry of Health, which is also the source for many international bodies, such as the WHO, OCHA, which is the UN body for humanitarian aid. And that is the source of the information. In terms of prisoners and detainees, and what I talked a bit, and you can see in the brochures on your chairs, the abduction of medical professionals from Gaza So we sent lawyers into Israeli incarceration facilities to collect testimonies from prisoners, from healthcare professionals who are imprisoned. You can see in the report we published the torture that they have been facing, the investigations that they have been going through, and basically the violation of their protection as health professionals under the Geneva Conventions and others. Again, just one part of this entire kind of puzzle of attack on healthcare.
Great. Do you also cooperate with Palestinian human rights organizations?
Yeah, definitely. We exchange information, we coordinate with a few organizations.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you very much. Our next point will be a presentation from Dr. Nazal about her experiences on the ground in Gaza. Again, as mentioned before, she went to Gaza a few months ago, and so you will get a first-hand experience of how's it like to be a doctor trying to provide healthcare for the people in Gaza.
Okay, also thank you from my side for the invitation and for hosting us here today. So yes, I want to show you a little bit how destruction of a healthcare system looks like, in particular in Gaza. So I was supposed to travel to Gaza in the beginning, so the last week of January and the first week of February. Things changed a little bit, but I'm going to come to that in a bit. So it was this year, so just a couple of weeks ago. So as the Rafah border crossing, so the border between Egypt and Gaza is closed currently, all the medical missions have to go through Amman, so through Jordan. So all the doctors that were signed up for this mission met in Amman on the day before the supposed entry. And then approximately 9 hours before the scheduled departure to the border crossing to Gaza, we received the final confirmation from Kogat, so from the Israeli body that controls what medical mission and what medical aid gets to enter into Gaza and what not. They told us who's allowed to enter and who is not allowed to enter. So the majority of my team that I traveled with, they came from the United States, and they all took, we all took holiday off of our work time schedules. And so a lot of them came from really far away to get there. And then you need to understand that some of them were actually refused and were sent back. So we were a team of 18 people, and finally when we got the result at 9 p.m. in the evening, 4 of us got declined immediately, and then 14 of us got the permission to go. So on this map here you can see the trip that we were supposed to take, so from Amman and then to the Jordanian border crossing, then the Israeli border crossing, then from there to Abu Salim, which is the entry point to Gaza. In normal circumstances, as the distance isn't that far, it should be only a trip of 3.5 hours, but for us it was 10 hours instead. So this was the first crossing. It was the Jordanian side, so over there we were already waiting for around 3 or 4 hours for the Jordanian officials to control our passports. And you can see some of our colleagues are already lying on the ground. They've been so tired waiting. And here we got the confirmation to get to go, and I took a photo at this point because this is the crossing point between Jordan and Israel, and it was the first time for me to get to actually exit the bus because there was so much traffic. So I was kind of excited, and I thought I would take a selfie in that situation. So there's approximately only 2 kilometers between these 2 points, but there's no private cars that are actually allowed to cross. It's only one specific company that gets to go. And then after we crossed the Israeli side, so all of us got through, the 14 doctors and nurses, we received this message that there were shootings in Rafah. So we were not allowed to get to travel to Gaza on that day. So the entire team was sent back to Jordan. This was after 10 hours of traveling. And so, of course, everybody was extremely devastated. So this was in the last week of January. So it was during the ceasefire, the so-called supposed ceasefire. So now we're fast forwarding, basically. This is 1 week later, because only an entire week later we were allowed to take another attempt at getting to enter Gaza. So this was one of the tanks that we saw on the way to Gaza, so very close to the border crossing. That's why I said supposed ceasefire, because there were bombings on an everyday basis still. And here you can see they were still sending a tank into the direction of Kerem Abu Salim. And so we coordinated, of course, with all the other NGOs as well, so with the United Nations. So here you can see the Red Crescent. So now we're still on the Israeli side of the Kerem Abu Salim crossing. So our team was 14 people, and the United Nations sent in around 30 people, not just healthcare workers, also others. So I have a time limit. Okay. Okay. So, and this was after we got to enter Kerem Abu Salim. So this is the Jordanian side, the Gazan side. Yeah, basically you see a severe, extreme security fence system here, let's say. Not just fences, but actually entire murals. So I can tell you, we were forced to cross Kerem Abu Salim walking, which is not that far. It was around 300 or 400 meters. But while walking through all these gates and through the mural and through this huge iron gate, I really had the feeling that I'm entering a prison. It was, it was literally like, okay, I know for sure now I'm gonna enter this place and there's no way getting back out that easily. So there's no way back, basically. But anyways, all of us were quite relieved that we finally got to go there. And you can see the sun is already setting. So even on the second attempt, it took us an entire 10 hours to get to enter Gaza. So, and this is the ride. So this is the entire area of Kerem Abu Salim, driving to Rafah. And so as you can see, there is literally nothing. There's not a single building standing. And this is our driver, Abu Zaki, who had just recently survived an attack. So his van, like the front window, is destroyed. And here he was telling us just about the measurements of Gaza. So Gaza, you have to imagine, I always say it's approximately the size of Berlin. And you can see a lot of the trucks standing in the way. So some of them waiting to get to exit again. That was the time when the Rafah crossing was open for medical aid to enter. But you can also see there are a lot of trucks that are still loaded that didn't even get to enter yet. Yeah, so that was the point when Abu Zaki told me that I'm actually not supposed to be taking a video here as it's a security zone. But okay, and now I want to show you some of the images of the hospital. So this is the view of Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. So here, down here you can see the field hospitals that were built, of course, because during the acute bombardments, the casualties were so many that, of course, there were not enough beds available for the patients, so they needed to expand the hospital. In the background, you can see the nephrology department, which was, as Guy had already mentioned, it was completely destroyed, so there can no longer be dialysis for the patients. Here in the background, you can see all the ambulance cars that were destroyed by the Israeli military that are kind of just thrown on top of each other. And on the right side of the image, it is basically a graveyard. So that's where all of the patients that didn't make it, that were murdered, were buried, just because all the cemeteries are basically also flooded with human beings, so they had to start using the grounds of the hospital as cemeteries. This is again the dialysis department. And this is the Al-Shifa Hospital. I'm sure many of you have seen this. So Al-Shifa Hospital was the biggest hospital in Gaza. It was the university hospital. It's completely destroyed, and this was Of course, this is already a while ago. One of our colleagues actually got to go to the north, so he was taking pictures right from off the ground. This is from February this year, so we cannot use that hospital anymore. They rebuilt the emergency department. I haven't been there, haven't seen it, but they're trying to do something with the rest of the building that is still standing. And so he got to go inside also, and he took it before, like on this image you can basically see how it used to look like compared to what it does look like now. So obviously there's nothing left to use. And then here you see an image of the neonatology department with the incubators and computers and ultrasound machines. And so this is just an example, basically. You know? So it has become a pattern to not just destroy the buildings from the outside, but also to destroy the medical machines that are inside. So there are images of CT scans and MRI machines that have multiple bullet holes in them, just for the purpose, basically, of never being able to use it again. So this is the eye hospital in the north also. It was one of the first hospitals that was bombarded. It was the 8th of October 2023. And this is a recent image. It's the same hospital that I had just shown you in the beginning, where you could see the cemetery. So this is Nasser Hospital. It's about 3 weeks ago when there was a direct attack on the hospital, on the male surgical department. So just wanting to let you know that this is unfortunately still ongoing. The healthcare system and healthcare workers have increasingly actually become a target. Okay, and now I just want to mention this because we're very close to Elbit Systems here in Munich. So unfortunately, Elbit System is the biggest Israeli weapon company, and they have opened the first branch here in Europe, and it is here in Germany. It's in Ulm, and they produce one of the deadly machines that they produce is this quadcopter, and the quadcopter is a machine that has the capability to actually enter buildings as well. And so this machine has entered hospital buildings and assassinated patients in their beds. And it is one of the first AI-guided machines also. So what it actually has included is a target tracker. So it doesn't even really differentiate anymore between who is the human being that you're going to kill, but it's more, the way that I understand it, it has a sensor, and anything that moves is a target, does become a target, so you basically shoot. So as we know, the genocide in Gaza is the first war that includes so much artificial intelligence. So Gaza, unfortunately, still continues to be the laboratory for military companies to experience on their newest machines. So these are some images from the European hospital. The European Gaza hospital is EGH. It's where I was stationed most of the time. I was between the European hospital and the Nasser hospital. So during the time that I was there, there were no mass casualties, but there were acute cases that were coming in every day. But we also had the chance to treat patients with chronic diseases. So in this case here, it was my colleagues, the guy to the left is a maxillofacial surgeon, and the one in the middle is a plastic surgeon. And so they're operating on a child with a cleft palate, which is something that you do. It's not an urgent operation that needs to be done, but while we were there and we had the time to do it, they offered the kid to do this kind of surgery. So we're quite happy. This is a patient that 2 weeks prior to our arrival had suffered severe burn injuries from an explosion where he had lost his eye. So one of the So I was called to the ICU to come and see him because his eye was still infected. So they wanted me to do a sort of revision surgery because it wasn't properly healing. So the story of this man is basically he was trying to remove the rubble, since there was time now and availability to try and reconstruct some parts of Gaza again. People were started tidying up their houses and their areas. So while he was lifting up the rubble, there was still a grenade somewhere within it and under the rubble, so it exploded. So these are some of the acute cases that I was mentioning. So in this case, so as I said, he lost his eyeball, but because when they did the primary surgery, they didn't have the proper materials to do the surgery. I needed to redo it, and because also there was an infection, I cleared it up again, and there were still some splinters from foreign bodies in the orbital cavity, so in the eye cavity, basically. And so yeah. Yeah, so as I'm an ophthalmic surgeon, an eye surgeon, but I always like to look over my field, and I do want to just emphasize at this point that not only eyes are being removed as organs, but Gaza now suffers the highest number of amputees. It's around 65,000 people who got extremities amputated. So this kid here got not just one, but 3 of his extremities amputated. And this is also the European hospital. During the time that I was there was the hostage exchange going on. And the Palestinian hostages that were being released, they were first brought to the European hospital in order to get an examination. So here in the evening, we were waiting for them to come. So you see some medical staff, some people from the security, and a lot of family members and friends of all these people were waiting for them to come. So I just want to give you a little bit of an insight for how that looked like. It was extremely messy. There was a lot of pressure going on because everyone was just so excited that they're coming back home. So you can see them all wearing this gray jumper. They look quite happy and relieved, but also just tired and exhausted and malnourished. So this was how it looked like when we examined them. So this patient, so you can see the jumper is completely dirty, his feet are very dirty. And all of them had marks of the handcuffs around their wrists and around their ankles. The majority of them had scabies, which is an infectious skin disease, and they were all malnourished. So when we saw them, we basically first of all asked them if they have any complaints, if something happened to them. And most of them were telling us that they suffered from beings and in the rib area or in the abdominal area. So the examinations that we did were very shallow. In my opinion, we could have hospitalized all of these people because the majority, actually all of these hostages that came out, they were in prison for more than 20 years. So the one that I think was 34 was the maximum that I spoke to. On that evening, 24 people were released. And of all these prisoners, none of them actually came from Gaza originally. So they were released to Gaza, but originally they came from either the West Bank or Jordan. I saw some from Jordan, or Jerusalem. So this patient, as it was a kind of celebratory moment, that they were released. So they gave them a flag and they gave them a scarf and they spread dates for everybody. So I thought it was quite cute to see him leave with an elevated head and an elevated flag. Yeah, and this is like the first impressions. Yeah, or should I go on with that? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Diana, and also thank you for your courage. you again. It must have been a very, very difficult decision to just go there. Yeah, perhaps we might talk a bit more about another, perhaps not directly health-related subject, but yet still very vital for the health situation, and that is water. So perhaps Tom and Siva, would you like to tell us a bit about what challenges you faced while initiating the project of Clean Shelter, what accusations you had to deal with, what are the things that you were able to overcome in order to be able to succeed in implementing the project?
Hello. It works? Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for your interest and the cause and for being here. My name is Siva. I'm from Palestine, Gaza specific. And I'm a co-founder with Tom Kellner of Clean Shelter. And Clean Shelter is the German NGO that founded and registered in 2024 as to do a humanitarian aid for displaced communities in Gaza. And we mainly focus on providing shelter, sanitation, and also now we are doing water projects. And well, maybe Diana just mentioned many of the challenges, trying to enter as international, as doctors, trying to be in Gaza and give the help. They passed through many borders, and sometimes it doesn't work. It worked with you, but many, many times it doesn't work. Especially now when we want to deliver material and equipment, when we want energy, because to provide anything we will need energy, and the fuel prices are getting very high, and we were just a small organization depending on individual donations, and we couldn't buy anything like in Gaza. We wanted to sustain our work. We couldn't find material in Gaza. Actually, we did kind of measures in order to we adapted do-it-yourself approach in order to be able to do tents to provide clean water, but still a lot of cost was involved. Also, for us, Tom and I, we couldn't go there and see, and we had to do everything from afar with communication. Even communication sometimes was very difficult. I remember in the beginning of Clean Shelter, we couldn't contact our team for 5 days. And Tom was asking me, so are you religious? How can you be that calm? Oh, Tom, we're used to this. Because I have a family there, and I experienced this many times that I lose connection with them for 5 days, for a week, and then they're back and they say, hey, now we can contact. Everything was very expensive, everything was not available, and also everything we do is at risk. We cannot control risk because we cannot guarantee 100% if we provide shelter and toilets in this place that will remain there, because people may get evacuation order. They will have to leave everything, and we have to consider moving all the equipment we put or all the infrastructure we did to another location. And also sometimes with the movement and with the chaos happening, we lose everything that we did somehow, it gets stolen or destroyed or whatever, many things. So we needed to make peace with this kind of loss, because working in crisis, whether we choose, we want to serve people or we don't want to serve people. And if we want to serve people in this kind of circumstances, you will have to take the risk. So these are the main challenges that we are facing, but still maybe Tom can add more. Do you remember anything that I missed?
Yeah, so I want to add only the perspective that links this to public health. So, of course, waste management is a huge issue in camps with displaced people. In Al-Moasi, which was determined as the so-called humanitarian zone or safe zone in Gaza, it's neither one of these, but because it wasn't so populated before the war, this is the reason it was chosen as a designated area for these new camps for displaced persons. And one of the first things, and this is actually, I think, our first motivation to work in Gaza, was that we realized through needs assessment on the ground that while a lot of bigger organizations are bringing tents and are providing food, for instance, toilets are a thing that is overlooked many times. I think it has to do with the fact that there's a lot of chaos, there are a lot of big issues, and there's also the assumption that people can find their own solutions for their own waste, which is maybe a reasonable assumption for the first week or two, but not for a year and a half. I think also, or we think that this is also a feminist issue, because men pee all over the place, whereas women cannot. And women usually take care of the children, they take care of the elderly, so they have to have, you know, more facilities and also more privacy when it comes to toilets. So this is more or less how we started. Then around May, we started getting a lot of reports about a lot of waterborne diseases in the camps and the area. A lot of children with skin diseases. People were washing with salt water and water that is highly salinated and polluted. And this created a lot of diseases. Also kidney failures, also hepatitis A, which usually is not supposed to be lethal, but in conditions of such malnutrition and also already a lot of underlying diseases and so on, people were actually dying from, you know, stupid reasons. So we started purchasing water and delivering it at the beginning in the south, then in the middle areas of Gaza. During the ceasefire, when you were in Gaza, we started also working in the north, because that was actually the only 2 months of a time frame that we could do more substantial work there. I think that our water initiatives are the most, I would say, effective thing that we have done when it comes to public health in Gaza. We finalized last month a very big water project in Khan Yunis, where we repaired the water grid for 6 neighborhoods in the east of Khan Yunis, meaning that 120,000 people in Khan Yunis can have access to clean drinking water, which I think is pretty substantial. Luckily, this area wasn't bombed, which is, like Seba said, just pure luck. We have no control over that. We also take into consideration that sometimes you will have to build and rebuild and purchase and repurchase the things that we do. We had this with toilet seats, for instance, that we realized that we're purchasing in the market toilet seats that we already bought. But that's just a crisis response, I guess.
Yeah, well, you may ask, I see this question in your eyes, that how come like 2 women based in Germany and they're doing a lot of work like this? And it's just because we are, in the beginning, since the day one, or even before Tom and I get together, because Tom and I just get to know each other on the 8th of October 2023. But the main, like, how can we do this? We started building relationships with vendors, suppliers, like entrepreneurs that they don't know that they are entrepreneurs. They don't know what this word even, they don't know English. And also with the community actors, community leaders. I'm from Gaza, so I know like sometimes it's family based. And I need to, like, if I want to serve in this area, it's not about the local governance. Local governance is important, but also important the muhtar, the person of this like family. I don't know, it's in Arabic. So we started giving like strong relationship with the people, with the community actors, with community-based organizations, with women organizations, as well as vendors and suppliers. And that's how we can do like huge infrastructure projects. Not huge, maybe I'm exaggerating, but big enough for 2 women. We do it through like our vendors. We do have a small team in Gaza of a civil engineer, administrative assistant, and another coordinator that we do monitoring and also the need assessment also. And actually need assessment sometimes I can do it from afar, like calling people even sometimes with like morning gossip will involve a lot of information somehow. It's enjoy, I like gossip, Gaza gossip, but I also learn a lot from the dynamics and what works, what doesn't work. where should we move, what to avoid, and what are the trends there, and like if I want to know about the quality of pipes that we are using to restore the pipeline, I'll need to have a lot of conversation with many people in order to know about how people produce pipelines in such current circumstances. What kind of chemicals are they involving? So it's a lot of conversation that is not directly asking for this.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Perhaps just a follow-up question to that. So since the blockade was reinitiated in Gaza, reinstalled since I think the 18th of March, how has that hindered your work? And perhaps Dr. Diana can also show us some real-life data about how the blockade actually influences or affects the lives of ordinary people. Like, how does that materialize into numbers?
Yeah, you're asking, sorry, I thought it's for us.
Yes, I kind of just, I think it just underlines what Siva just said. So right when I came back to Germany after the trip, I actually spoke to Abu Zaki, so the driver, and I asked him, Abu Zaki, can you help me understand the developments of the inflation rates in Gaza? So we kind of tried to make like an overview for how prices developed. So let's say, for example, let's just pick, what can we pick? Like the oranges, for example. So in the first week after the 7th of October, 1 kilo of oranges costed 80 cents. After 1 month, it went up to €1.60. And then after the first, after January 2024, so basically after 3 months, it already kind of went up by 10-folds, and there was a difference between N, meaning the north, and the south. So in the north, oranges were no longer available, and in the south, they cost between 3 to 10 euros, depending on how much good is actually entering. So I think one of the most extreme things, and Siva was mentioning this also, is the gasoline. No, so people weren't able to neither run cars nor trucks, nor hospitals were also not able to run the generators, because 1 liter of gasoline costed 73 euros. And of course, what was really bad was the situation of nicotine. So actually 1 liter of nicotine costing 270,000 euros. So all these things were no longer available. So as was mentioned, I mean, during the time that I was there, it was very cute, because the nurse that I was sharing the room with, she was super excited for like little things that she got to eat again, because the goods were starting to come back in again, which is mostly food, because during the ceasefire, so-called ceasefire, they were still not allowing any medical materials to enter. So that was something that I wanted to mention earlier, which I missed out on. All the medical materials that I needed for my surgeries, I actually brought them in myself. And there were severe restrictions as to what you're allowed to bring in as a doctor, if you're even not allowed to bring something in. And the regulations that we received from KOGAT, so from that body that controls what's allowed to enter, is literally, the phrase was, you can bring in medical equipment for your personal use. So personal use can be anything, no? And it is intended that it is this arbitrary, because if you leave it as blurry as that the slogan, then basically the border guard can decide on that day, depending on his mood or on if he likes your face or not, or I don't know on what exactly, if you're allowed to enter with that amount of equipment or not. Maybe here I can also mention the amount of money that we're allowed to enter. So back when I entered in January, I was allowed to bring with me $2,900. And I tried to go back into Gaza in March, on the 11th of March of this year, mostly because I was just so that our mission was reduced to only 1 week, and I was not allowed to extend in that 1 week, that I tried to go again, like, to the next possible moment that I got. So for March already they had changed the regulations. So the regulation was then, you're allowed to bring in $290. And this was, I mean, the blockade had already started then again, because the blockade started again on the 3rd of March, and I was supposed to enter on the 11th of March, but I was delayed, so to say. So there are 3 things that can happen to you when you want to enter as a medical worker. So either you get denied right away, or you get to enter, or a new thing that they came up with now is this delay. So they basically tell you, okay, you're not allowed to enter now, but you can try again maybe in 4 days or maybe in a week. And there are healthcare workers that wait for weeks in Jordan until they get the permission to enter. So it was completely insane. So I waited for 1.5 weeks, and it didn't work out the 3rd time. And so I decided to leave, because it is a form of torture also, no? Because when you're waiting there and you feel like you're wasting money and you're not being useful for anybody. So it's extremely challenging and frustrating to have somebody put all these obstacles in your way, and you don't really have any control or any say about it. So coming back to this, obviously all of this causes exactly that. So severe malnutrition, so a lot of the kids are suffering that. So right now, I think there are 65,000 children that have been hospitalized or that are being hospitalized currently, while we're speaking now, because of malnutrition. Because the blockade has been going on since the 3rd of March now. So you get to imagine it's been more than 50 days that there's literally nothing is entering Gaza at the moment. So my colleagues, when I speak to them now and I tell them, okay, I'm invited to this talk, what do you want me to like point out for this talk now? What's like most urgent? And they literally tell me there's no food, there's no food. Tell them we're locked up and we're not getting anything to eat. So that's why I'm emphasizing this at that point again. Yes, of course, more than just food. It's about the complications that you have to go through with the medical equipment. It's just insane. And a lot of the things. I mean, one of my colleagues that was supposed to enter with me in January on the 2nd attempt, he was actually sent back because, according to the border guard, he had too much equipment with him, and he actually risked that the entire mission was going to be cancelled as well. And so he had too much money with him. So what happened then actually is that they took the money from him and it disappeared. So that's also another thing that needs to be spoken about. I think there are a lot of things, especially the journey of trying to go there. People don't speak about that much, because what you see on the ground, of course, there's severe devastation. But for me, that experience of just the trip in itself, it was already exhausting enough, let's say.
Thank you very much, Diana. Speaking about the mental stress and perhaps the torture that you described while waiting in vain to be let in, perhaps Dr. Charlotte can also tell us a bit more about the reports about the torture, the practice of torture that has been taking place in certain prisons, for example, like in State Iman, in Megiddo, in Ofer. You know, like there are the prominent examples of Dr. Adnan al-Bush, who was the orthopedic head of a hospital that was kidnapped and died due to severe torture. And right now, people are still wondering if that is the same fate that's going to happen to Dr. Bassam Abu Safiya, which is also another medical director. Yeah, Dr. Shalmir, perhaps you can tell us a bit more about your work about that.
Yeah, so like I said, this is part of the general attack, and So in terms of like the different facilities in Israel that held Palestinians since October 7, so there were founded two camps, two military camps to hold many of the detainees. And in addition to that, the Israeli prison service, the IPS, also was holding many more Palestinian prisoners than before October 7. Might be a good point to also mention that, of course, history didn't start in October 7, and the torture and maltreatment of Palestinian detainees, administrative detention of Palestinians is something that is part of Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Gaza for 6 decades. Actually, some of the prisoners that you met after many years in Israeli prison were victims of medical neglect. This is something we are working for many, many years. So the conditions they are out is part of like many, many years of the torturous situation in Israeli prisons. But since October 7, things have gone way worse. There are more than 10,000 Palestinians held in different incarceration facilities. The number of prisoners or detainees in the same room has doubled and tripled. They don't have even beds. And I'm talking only about the civil Israel prison service, and not even starting with the military camps, which I'll add right after this. And malnutrition, we had nutritionists going over the testimonies we got about how much they are getting and analyzing that, showing that it is critically malnourishment of prisoners and detainees, and we've seen people being released in these hostage exchanges, seeing people in very bad conditions of malnutrition. More than 70 people, Palestinians, died in Israeli facilities, in the Israel prison service and the Israeli camps, the military camps, which is an absurd number. Guantanamo Bay was active for more than 20 years, it's still in a way active, and 9 detainees, prisoners died there. So we are looking at more than 70 prisoners and detainees who died in custody in the past year and a half in Israeli facilities. This is a very also important way to understand Israel's violation of international humanitarian law, because Israel has all these arguments about whether the attack on Gaza is legal, or they can bring some claims about Hamas using hospitals or other ways, but there is really no argument that can justify the torture of people that they hold, Israel is holding in its facilities. And so it's a very important aspect, and actually it was a very important argument for the UK government to reconsider arms deals with Israel. They said we cannot prove that Israel is violating international humanitarian law in Gaza. What we see in the detention centers make us suspect that they're also violating humanitarian law in Gaza. And the worst, of course, situation is in the Israeli military camps. Sdete Man, the notorious Sdete Man camp, where prisoners, it went up to 1,000 prisoners at the time, detainees, not prisoners because they were never sentenced, were held in 5 cages, handcuffed with their hands and their legs, cuffed in their legs for almost 24 hours a day, and being beaten, attacked by dogs, by guards. We started to get information out of this really a black hole camp very early, because the no Israeli government institution wanted to care for these people in Sdete Man. So the Ministry of Health didn't want to care for the prisoners. Hospital directors were gone public. We're not going to hospitalize Palestinian detainees, and the military didn't want to provide the health care to these detainees. So they just got a private company to open and fill the hospital inside Sdete Man, and try to get in volunteers, doctors, volunteers to work there to provide some healthcare for the prisoners. So that actually was their mistake, because then they got people from the outside. Usually all this torture never goes out, because these are all doctors that are part of the system. But in this case, they got people from the outside inside. So that's how we started getting whistleblowers, getting information on what's going on in this camp. and of course violation of any kind of medical ethics that you can consider in this medical facility. Maybe many of you have heard about the very kind of publicized case of a sexual assault of one of the detainees. And that got out. There are many others. We know of many others. That got out only because that person was so severely attacked that they had to hospitalize him, in a civilian hospital. And that's how we got the information, the medical record, so we could take it out and publish it. But by the way, he was then released from the hospital back to Sdetema, to where his attackers were still working. So this entire kind of facility, institution of incarceration, torture, and attack on prisoners, medical neglect, nutrition, is part of the reality for thousands and thousands of Palestinians held with no trial in Israeli facilities.
Thank you very much. Since time is getting late, there is just one more important issue that maybe we can, everybody can talk about. So we've seen the destruction of healthcare facilities on an unprecedented level. But hospitals, also like in Lebanon, in Syria, are also getting attacked, like everywhere in the world. And we're just wondering, do you see like a global trend in the increase of attacks on the healthcare facilities? Or do you think this is part of a genocidal pattern, perhaps, that is designed to create conditions leading to the destruction of Palestinian Gazans as a group? Like how, maybe perhaps anybody would like to answer that. Do you see it like as a sort, or maybe perhaps it's the impunity that Israel has enjoyed so far that has led to the increase of attacks on healthcare facilities?
Yeah, I mean, what I can just say to that is that definitely Israel has normalized now, or is in the process of normalizing any attack on hospitals. I also want to say, I mean, Guy was mentioning this in the beginning, that they were doing this under the claim that supposedly there were some sort of military tunnels right under the hospital, but there was never any independent proof of that is actually the truth. And so yes, for sure, after Gaza, also in Lebanon and in Syria, they've been attacking the hospitals. But I think there is one very clear intent behind that. This healthcare system aids in the genocide in itself. It does accelerate the ethnic cleansing of Gaza in itself, because if you do not have any measures to treat all these acutely or injured patients, or the chronically ill patients, maybe patients with diabetes or renal failures, or the cancer patients, you cannot treat any of these, so they will all eventually die. So it is an essential part of the strategy of the intent of the ethnic cleansing of Gaza.
And I might add.
Okay. No, I thought we were doing it like this. Please go ahead, and then we do it after you.
Okay. So I just wanted to add that this, in fact, we know from previous cases in Syria, for example, that when the regime wanted an area ethnically cleansed or cleansed, they attacked the hospital. This is the way to get people out. And in Gaza, we've seen that from day one. Israel issued evacuation orders to 22 hospitals just in one week after October 7th, 22nd of October. So there is no even a way to rationalize that in terms of, did they have information, did they have intelligence of 22 different hospitals, all in the north side of Gaza? And of course we haven't seen the evidence afterwards. An extreme case is the Kamal Adwan hospital in North Gaza, which was the only kind of substantial medical facility that was left in North Gaza, and it was attacked for a month daily before it was finally destroyed and burned. And we appealed to the Israeli High Court to stop these attacks, and then again, 2 days before it was destroyed, we demanded an immediate discussion with that will stop this attack. And the state, the military, responded to our appeal. No, everything is okay. We are in touch with people in the hospital. We are caring for, we're allowing the hospital to continue operating. 2 days afterwards, they destructed the entire hospital, arrested hundreds of medical professionals, including Hussam Bousafia, who is still held in Israeli facilities.
Yeah, thank you. I think if we want to dig deeper in this, we will talk about the systematic attack of the reproductive health, which is more profound, and in clean shelter, we don't care what are the strategy behind what's happening. We deal with some like catastrophe that we need to deal with. We are not a political organization, but we, like Tom and I, we came together because we are both action-oriented and what to do. And like starting with water, delivering clean water, delivering like protection for women, protection camp. We started this project recently, like having like we're launching our first protection camp for women, women-led households. We are also doing like a water project that we are linking the Mawasi area, which doesn't have any infrastructure because before the war, it wasn't like populated actually, and now it's after the evacuation from Rafah. I think it's going to be like populated and it needs urgent urban planning. What we can start with is just to do the infrastructure for water. We're starting little by little because we don't have much to cover everything, and we need also to be careful and evaluate every step we do, but at least we deliver water to camps before they become neighborhoods with buildings. So we focus on how to resolve this because I'm sure like we cannot make a lot of change. Like as Seba and Tom, many people are powerful when it comes to advocacy and political argumentation, but I tried this, personally, I tried this at the very beginning, linking the hospitals with the solar field that we owned, like as a family, and like after 1 week I knew it's not possible, and then 1 month after we found out the solar field, it was destroyed. And the first the first ceasefire, we went there to find that this solar field was destroyed. So we tried before the war to make Gaza a sustainable place and provide with renewable energy. And we found out now all what we can do is action, crisis response, fast, save lives.
Okay. Thank you very, very much to our guests. We may now open